I just bought this broken BMW for $2,700, which makes this F20 the cheapest in the entire country. When this BMW F20 came up for sale, I instantly knew I had to buy it. Single owner and only 50,000 miles. However, even though it seems like a good deal, there's one minor problem. This broken BMW is in the other side of the country. Damn. This is actually a turbocharged. I mean, the car looks amazing though. A few scrapes on the rear bumper right here, but the rest looks pretty good. I mean, damn, it's a super nice car. And we are back at the workshop. It was a nice trip, went as smooth as it can get. It's cold, so let's pull this thing inside and let's talk about what's really wrong with this thing and what's wrong with the engine. Why did the previous owner sell this car? The car started running rough. It was misfiring, well, not really misfiring, but more it had a rough idle and it got an engine light. Then he delivered the car to BMW to get it checked out, and they found there was a bunch of code for VANAS and the VANAS system. They had the valve cover off, and they found that the VANAS solenoids were clogged up by metal shavings, and they inspected the filter and there was some metal in the filter. Then the owner got a quote from BMW for around like 80,000 krones, like $7,000, 7,000 euros, something like that, to replace both of the VANAS units, well, the sprockets, VANAS solenoids, also some other things such as thermostat housing, because that's leaking and stuff like that. And they still couldn't give warranty on the work that they did. They couldn't give warranty on the engine because they found some metal in the filter. So then he decided to sell the car. So I'm guessing it was running bad because the VANAS solenoids got clogged up. And of course BMW is not gonna put dirty solenoids back. So they cleaned them up, put them back in, and now the car is running perfect. They advised him to change the timing chain, stuff like that. And on the quote from BMW, they say that the shavings could be from the timing chains, something like that. That's what I don't understand, because usually the shavings are gonna be from the bearings. Because at first I was hesitant of driving the car home. I spoke to the guy, he was like, oh yeah, I've been using the car, no problem. The car is running good, the only thing is it's leaking coolant. So that's why I just drove it home. So from what I understand, this engine is the N13 engine, 1.6 liter petrol, turbo powered. After some googling, I found that this engine is made by BMW slash Peugeot slash Citroën. Maybe this is the first non-BMW engine we're doing. So I think the first order of business, remove the filter and inspect it. Inspect the amount of metal. Whoa. That is some kind of a vacuum. Yes. Here I have a clean box. Who puts this thing in the way? It's leaking. Here's the filter. A very few pieces of bearing Very minimal, like that on my finger, right there. And there's maybe like 20 of these in the filter. I'm not sure what's the best case of action here to do. Do we pull the engine out and replace all the bearings? So I did some research. This is what they call the Prince engine. And this engine is created by PSA, Peugeot and Citroën collaborating with BMW. From what I understood reading about it, most of the engine parts are made in France in the PSA factory, well, Peugeot and Citroën, but it is assembled at the BMW factory. And it uses the BMW technologies such as the VANA system, the valvetronic system, and it is a modern engine with direct injection and a turbocharger. So this is going to be interesting. What is the plan? The plan right now is that I don't want to do a complete engine rebuild because the metal shavings is not bad at all. But there definitely is some, so we can't just leave it like that and go as it is. We cannot do that. The plan now, I bought another oil filter, reinstall it, let the engine run for a bit, and then we will do a compression test. If the compression test is okay, it's even in all cylinders, we'll just pull the engine out, replace the rod bearings, main bearings, timing chains, valve stem seals, and some other things. What I found could be a problem with this engine, then maybe replace the VANA solenoids. I think that should be a good plan. Here I bought a cheap filter. It's the same. I guess it looks the same. I'm not even gonna bother replacing the O-rings. Do we have any oil? Yes, sir. So I will start the engine up and let it idle, warm up slightly, because you're supposed to take compression test on a warm engine. So there is some codes for the electric system, but nothing to do with the engine. The spark plugs use a standard BMW socket. What I don't understand, where the heck are the injectors? Where is the injectors? So it seems that the injector sits under the manifold. Doesn't really make sense because it said that this engine is direct injection, so how does it spray into the combustion chamber that way? Here I have my compression tester. Yep. The way compression tests work, all of the compression tests from different brands are gonna show different results. But what you need to look after is that it's even on all cylinders. If one is out of spec or two is out of spec or something like that, then you have a problem. But if all four are around the same, we are good then. It seems that there's something wrong with my tester, so I went and got another compression tester, because that one, the engine is cold now, but who cares? We're just gonna look for evenness. So I would say the compression is good. Put in the spark plugs just so nothing falls into the engine. So we will not remove the head, so we will just fully service this engine, but not do a complete rebuild. So I will start removing stuff around it, start pulling the engine out. We need to remove the airbox, undo all the hoses, the intercooler line, stuff like that. And I mean, it seems like it shouldn't be too hard to remove this engine. That just pops out. Usually parts like that are garbage because it breaks so easy, but this one is good. Still not brittle from the age. Okay. Never mind. This just cracked off. This flange here. So we need that too now. The amount of space here in the front is actually quite impressive. This is the left intercooler pipe, or well, I guess I mean the right one. There you go. That's the other intercooler pipe. Then there's this plastic. I also disconnected the battery right now. Now I need to disconnect all these cables here, as well as the positive terminal. Now I want to undo the engine mount. It seems that it's never been off. Okay. When we remove the engine, I don't want to empty the AC system because then we need to refill it again. So what we do, we just unbolt the AC compressor from the block. It sits right there, right there. So we unbolt it and we let it hang. And then when we put the engine back in, we just bolt it up. I'm not doing any coolant pipes yet because we need to remove the undercover, and I will do that then. Now I'm removing the starter motor. Finally, the starter is out. So now, as you can see, there is a little gap between the engine and the gearbox. It's completely separated. Not a lot of place here, but I removed all the housing bolts, as you can see, all around. At the top, I used my hand and I managed to reach up there with a ratchet or a wrench. And the starter motor, it sits in here above the subframe. So you have to remove it by 3 bolts. That's how it looks. And after you remove it, you can see in that hole, there's the flex plate and there's the bolts for the torque converter. Now I'm gonna undo the coolant pipes from the water pump. Aye. Now I am gonna put the car lower down. Oi! Holy cow! Now I am gonna jack up the gearbox so it doesn't fall after. Yeah. Forgot about the light. So this is the thermostat. What? Pretty cute engine, small one. Now we need to put it on the engine stand. Bruh. The bolts are so small thread. We're back. I bought some bolts that is gonna thread into the block. Seems that maybe I'll be able to put the bracket on with the flywheel in place. That would be pretty good. Engine sitting firmly. I haven't drained the oil yet. That is gonna be the first thing that I do. I will also remove the oil filter. So this is the filter that ran for a few minutes. Yeah, nothing. New washer on the drain bolt. Now I'm just gonna put the drain bolt back with a new washer. Now I just want to remove the valve cover. Size 10. Wow, it's actually super clean on the inside. Like incredibly clean. It's actually crazy. Wow. Okay, so I put the engine plus minus on TDC right now on cylinder 1. I haven't gotten the timing kit, so I can't really put it exactly on time. Now we can remove the oil pan. The oil pan does not have a gasket. It only sits on silicone sealant on this engine. The oil pan is so little. The oil pan seems quite clean. So it seems that this engine has some kind of solenoid in the oil pump integrated. So that is quite interesting. Then there are this cover for the sprocket here. Yeah, I have never seen anything like that before. An integrated solenoid. Wow. The thing is, there's basically zero information on these engines on the internet. So I want to disconnect the sensor, solenoid, and I think I need to undo this bolt in order to disconnect it. I'm gonna remove the engine bracket real quick, because right now it's kind of in the way. This thing, I'm guessing, is a lipstick. I'm gonna remove it so I don't break it. This is the connector for the solenoid, and it seems that it goes through and out here and connects to this connector. So I basically had to push it completely out, remove it from this bracket. Yeah, just like this. And now we can remove the oil pump. That's the oil pickup. Now I need to go and read the manual and find out if sprocket bolt is reverse thread or not, because I don't want to break it, because I want to remove the sprocket, then the entire oil pump, and then this little plate, so we have access to the crankshaft and the bearings. So in the manual it doesn't say anything about it being a reverse thread. Okay, that was kind of seized. Oh no. Okay, this plate. So now, counter holding on this bolt, I managed to remove almost all the bolts for the flex plate. I used a wrench and put it down here. I'm not sure what I was thinking. I could have done this before when the engine was off the stand, but at least there's enough place to do it now. So I did it. I left in one bolt, I loosened it and I tightened it, so I know it's possible to remove after, because we will need to remove the flex plate. Also before that we need to release the middle bolt here, and we will remove the entire bed plate to replace the main bearings. What I don't understand is this thing here. This is some kind of friction thing. I'm not sure how it works, but I will remove it so it's not in the way. We'll need to put belt on and stuff like that. So just like this, then unplug it, and then we can, the belt is behind here, stuck. I guess that can stay on. Now we'll remove also the sprocket. I'm going to remove this stud here because it's going to be in the way for us when we remove the bed plate, because I don't want to remove the cat and stuff like that. There's no need. So now I finally got the timing kit. Here's how it looks. So this thing together with this thing go on top of the camshafts, and then you lock the flywheel with this. So now the engine is almost at EDC. Now I did lock the flywheel. I had to rotate it a bit, because apparently the way you find timing when the engine is not at TDC. That's a first one for me. So then you put the smaller tool over the camshaft right here, like that. And then this goes here, over this one. I have never done any kind of engine repairs on an engine with Valvetronic, so everything is new in this case. These things, they are spring loaded, and if you open it just like that, it's gonna shoot out, and well, that's not good. So we know that this is in time. I'm not gonna put it on yet. Now I will flip the engine over again, because now I want to remove the bed plate. I also want to replace the valve stem seals, and in order to replace the valve stem seals on the intake side, you need a special tool to undo the spring loaded big clips here. So I have ordered a special tool for that. I hope it does arrive in time. Right here we can see the locking tool for the flywheel. Before I remove the flex plate, I want to undo the center bolt on this side. Okay, it's undone. Now we are ready to remove the bed plate. Now we'll release the bolts. Now I loosen them. Now I'm just going to remove the small bolts all the way around now. Seems like I need to remove the alternator anyway, because I need to remove this bracket. And that's the alternator. There are two longer ones, one here and one here. Now these bolts. Moment of truth, did we remove all the bolts? Maybe this thing? Nope. It seems that there's actually the two bolts here. I'm not sure how I need to remove. So I managed to remove these two caps like that. I did make a few small holes to manage to pull it out. So this is actually not that good because now the bed plate is kind of crooked, but now the bed plate should come off. Oi! Finally popped up. Now it's time to undo the rod bearings. This is very weird business. You can see the bolts, they are 12 point. So I have this whole 12 point socket kit. However, when I take a E12, it doesn't fit. It's too big. When I take an E10, it's too small. So then I took one of the new bolts with me to the parts store and I found an E11 and that was also too big. So then I found this socket, 3/8, and that fits, but it's kind of loose. So I don't want to wait, so I will try to use a 3/8 and be careful. Okay, that's not working, and it's too big. The only thing I found right now that fits is a 9mm wrench. That's the first one. And I will need to figure something out, I guess. To be honest, I'm not sure how I'm gonna tighten them. Okay. I'm gonna put the bolt on. Now lightly tap the bolt. Just like that. All of the journals look absolutely mint. The bearings itself, pretty good as well. You can see they're in good condition, but they're not new. So there is a few lines of dirt that got caught up inside the bearing. So I'm not sure what the BMW was about when they said there was metal in the engine. I'm guessing they just found grime on the solenoids, some random, I don't know, wear and tear. There's absolutely no metal in the engine that we have found. What do you guys think we should do now? So all the bearings are in a good condition, as well as the crankshaft. Crankshaft is nothing, no scratches, no anything. So technically we could just not even replace these bearings and just assemble it, replace the timing chains, and it would run fine. When we are already that deep into the engine, we need to replace the bearings at least. So now you're probably wondering, where do we get the parts from? Trotto. We have another big package from Trotto. In here, there should be everything that we need to make this engine driving again. Firstly, cabin filter, air filter, oil filter, Vanas solenoids, 2 of them, intake gaskets, then the thermostat housing. This is the housing that was sitting in the back of the engine where it was leaking coolant. So the housing, and together with it we got the pipe as well. Valve cover gasket, oil pump chain kit, so sprocket on the oil pump, sprocket on the crankshaft and the chain itself. Then the main timing chain. As you guys probably have seen, I often use Swag timing chains, and there's no reason for that. Had very good experience with Swag timing chains. I think you get the same part if you order Swag, Febi or Ina maybe. So all the guides. Then here we have both the main and rod bearings. I ordered standard size King bearings. They have a pretty good name in the bearing industry. That is right. Front and rear main seals, valve stem seals. They are same for the intake and exhaust side. Even though the engine is low mileage, it's old, and rubber seals, O-rings get hard over time. Then small gaskets, and lastly 4 original Bosch spark plugs. Now ordering parts sometimes can be annoying. When you order, you wait a long time and eventually you might get a wrong part. However, Trotto has a super good solution for that. They have a feature called compatibility check. So it's different for all the countries, but in many countries you can just put the license plate of your car, and after you place an order, Trotto double checks and makes sure that the part fits your car. If your country doesn't have the license plate feature, then you just find your car's make and year model in the list on their webpage, and they will double check to make sure that the parts fit your car. If you need any quality parts for your project, make sure to use code EMS1015 and get 10% off your order. This engine is not gonna fix itself. So now let's get back to work and install the new bearings and also measure the clearance. Let's get back to work. So now I want to remove the crankshaft, clean it up, change the bearings, reinstall the crankshaft, and also apply plastic gauge to check the clearance. However, as we can see, the timing chain is still on, and the tensioner for the timing chain, the main one, still in. So what I'm gonna do now is I will loosen the timing chain tensioner, just so when we undo the hub bolt, it doesn't pull the chain and hub straight down, because it's gonna apply tension. So if the tensioner is loose, technically we should be able to let it just hang here. The tensioner is right here. Okay, so now the tensioner is almost all the way out. Okay, so I guess you can remove the hub just. So we'll push the rod bearings slightly down. I mean the con rods. The crankshaft out. These two washers here, they fell out from this journal here. Sits right here against the wall, and this washer makes sure that the crankshaft doesn't move that way. So this is like a washer for axial play. Radial play is when crankshaft moves up and down, or this way. This way, it's axial play. And these washers are to keep the crankshaft from moving too much this way. So they are very important to reinstall. What is quite different on this car is that conrod bearings don't have a notch. Here we can see there's no notches. Usually there's a little high spot here, a nick that keeps the bearing from rotating and makes it seated in its spot. The top one that sits on the cap doesn't have it as well. The cap sits this way, and this is the bottom. There's a lot more wear on the top one that we removed right now. When the combustion happens in the combustion chamber, the petrol explodes and it pushes down the piston, and then there's pressure on the conrod that's pushing downwards, and that's what spins the crankshaft. That's why when it's pushing the crankshaft always after explosion this way, it wears the bearing. However, this is perfectly fine to reuse as well. This is just the top layer, nothing you can feel either. Now the conrod bearings are the same for both the top and the bottom. So the bearing that goes on this is the same that goes on the cap itself. However, that's not the case for the main bearings. They are different for the top and the bottom. The bottom ones, they have this groove that supplies the oil pressure. Now this here is the entire bed plate. And as we can see, the bearings of this do not have a hole in the middle and has no nicks as well. Now I cleaned up all of it. That is the gasket surface. I cleaned up all inside here, the rods, as best as I could basically. So all this is the main bearings. And here are the rod bearings. So then firstly I'll put in the rod bearings. Now you have to make sure that it's exactly center. And now also the main bearings. Now we'll pull the rods up. Now we will check the clearance. The way we do it is we use plastic gauge. Plastic gauge is a little line like that. We will cut up short pieces. We will put them on the crankshaft before we torque it down, and it's gonna tell us the clearance. Now we'll put on the plastic gauge on top of the journal. And now I will install the caps. Now to check the clearance, we are gonna use the old bolts. Now I just used a random socket, but now we need an actual socket to torque them down. I was looking everywhere nearby to find the right socket, and I just couldn't. The bolt is a 12 point. And the only thing I found was this thing. It is a 9mm 12 point socket. And as you can see, fits perfectly. Super snug. So now we need to somehow fabricate a socket that we could use on a torque wrench. So I think I will cut off here and I'll try to weld it inside this socket. So there was actually a screw here at the top that I undid. So now I'm just gonna drop it in here and we're gonna weld around it. And that should work. What can I say? I'm not here to make it pretty. I'm here to make it work. You welders are probably cringing. First torque is 5. Second torque is 15. 130 degrees. I thought the bolt snapped, but it's the welds. Now I'm gonna loosen the bolts. The clearance on the rod bearings is supposed to be between 0.02 and 0.07. Now when you buy plastic gauge, you get this little measuring paper. When we put the measuring paper right beside it, we can see by the width of the plastic gauge that got squished how tight the clearance is. So here as we see, slightly wider than 0.05 and way smaller than 0.038. So it's around 0.045. And it is the same case for all of the rod bearings. So the clearance are around 0.045 on all of them. Exactly where we need it to be. Now it's time to measure the main bearings. Then here I have the bed plate that I fully washed. So I'll just flush it out real quick with brake cleaner. Install the bearings. The old bolts that are just lubed up. So the main bearing screws are firstly torqued to 30 Newton meters. 150 degrees. Now we can loosen it. And now you can immediately see that they're a lot wider than the rod bearings. And there is a reason for that. Clearance for the main bearings is 0.02 to 0.04. So now we can see when we put it against the paper is that it's around the same width as 0.038, but a lot smaller than 0.025. Perfectly in spec, a bit more towards the looser side, but still in spec, and that's exactly what we want. And all of the main bearings are the same. Now I'm gonna wipe off the bearings the last time. I'll put assembly lube. before we put the crankshaft in is I want to put on the chain for the oil pump with the sprocket on the crankshaft like that, because after it's gonna be tight to put it on. Very important step before we forget, we have to reinstall these plates here. So I'm gonna lube it up with simple engine oil and they sit right in here. The same thing for the other side. Found out the part is exactly the same for both sides. However, these grooves must look towards the outside. So this side, the smooth one, goes against the wall. So it sits like that. So then we slide it in here. And we just push it in. Just like that. And now you can see the crankshaft is not sliding front and back anymore. So that's exactly how it's supposed to be. Assembly lube on the rod caps. And number 2. Final installation happens with new bolts that I fully oil up. And a re-welded socket again. This time I turned up the heat on the MIG welder, so I think this time it's gonna hold. Now we'll apply some assembly lube on the main bearings. Sealing the bed plate is actually interesting on this engine. You're supposed to add a bit of sealant right here along this line. But the weird thing is, on this side of the engine, you do it on the block, the engine block, but on this side, you do it on the bed plate. So that's the way the manual states. So that is what we are gonna do. So now I will add a tiny bit of sealant on this side on the block and on this side on the bed plate. I do not want to add too much. That went on. Then here are the main bearing bolts. So now lubed up bolts. Now I will install the lower bed plate bolts. With one time, the longer ones go here in the front. Now we do need to plug up these 2 holes. But of course, I did not order the 2 plugs. And there was a holes that we made. So I just welded these holes up. And it will work just fine. I'm gonna add some Reinstalling seal around the cap just so it doesn't leak. In the manual it actually says you need to use thread locker, but I'm not sure. Seems like this one went a bit deeper, but oh well. You can anyway remove it easily. And this is the whole oil pump assembly. So then the 3 main bolts for the oil pump. Gonna fish through connector. And then the whole pickup is like that here, but first we need to firstly oil pump to bed plate 25. Then the oil pickup. So I realized that we didn't even inspect the solenoid. I mean, yeah, completely clean, nothing. 8 Newton meters. This little clip thingy. I also bolted up the flywheel. I will remove the sprocket for the oil pump together with the bolt. Then here I have the new one. Apparently when you order swag, you get the same thing. So here we can see the top, it says IVIS DE. Here it says IVIS DE. And here where BMW sign is, and the part code is just scraped off or well removed. The same part if you order swag, at least for this engine. And fish up the chain. Oiled up the new bolt. Now this bolt we will need to torque down after we torque down the hub bolt. So here is the C belt, here's the crankshaft hub. So then the belt is like that. This wheel is rubbing against the belt, and also the other side of the same wheel is rubbing against here, the water pump. That is so trippy. So yesterday we finished everything at the bottom of the engine, or well, at least most of the things. So now we need to flip the engine over and start working on the top end. That is, I want to replace the valve stem seals, then assemble it together with new timing chains. The biggest difference on this engine compared to other engines are the valvetronic. There is a valvetronic motor in the back here, and according to when the driver presses the throttle, it makes valves open up faster, so it turns this inner shaft and opens the lifters a bit. Something along those lines, I'm not too sure, but now we'll lock the cams, just like that. Undo the Vanos gears. Then undo this guide rail, like that. It does say on the gears that this is X for exhaust. Now I will remove the timing tool. Firstly, let's do the easy one. Exhaust camshaft. Then the camshaft itself. And then I will also remove the lifters. Now this side is ready for replacing the valve stem seals. However, this side is the big problem when you need to remove all of this. You see all these springs, they have to sit in the right place. The top bolts, they are under a lot of pressure, so if you undo the top bolt, it's gonna shoot out. The way it shows in the manual is that you need a special tool. There's like two arms that clips under, and then you press together like a big pair of pliers, and that's gonna press the spring down, and then you can undo this bolt and disassemble everything. I have ordered the tool, but it seems that it's delayed. But after doing a lot of research, I have seen people making their own tools for it. But I also saw one guy, and he managed to remove the whole assembly here as one piece. So he just undid this bolt at the top and the two bolts each on the back, and he removed the whole thing as a single piece assembly. So that is what I'm gonna try to do. Even if I did this and this bolt on each of the cylinders, it's still gonna be under tension because these springs right here are on the lifters, the lifter down, and then there's a triangle arm as well. So you need to remove the tension of the arms. So you need to press this spring down here inwards, unclip it and lift it back so it rests against the cam. I will just use this normal clip tool from AliExpress. I put a bit of tape on it so it doesn't scratch the camshaft. And just like that. It's super easy if you do it with this thing. I tried doing it with a screwdriver, it's possible, but now we should be able to undo this bolt on each of the cylinders, and it should come off. Maybe now? Yes! These pins that we removed or pulled back, they sit and they hold this whole arm in place. Oops, and it sits exactly in this groove, the tip of the spring. So now remove all of them. And now we need to remove the eccentric shaft of the valvetronic. There is a little motor in the back here that controls all these teeth, and it spins always, but it doesn't really matter. That motor kind of resets every time you start the engine or something like that, so it doesn't really matter. Only thing is that after we reinstall cam, we just need to turn it manually all the way to the end, and then it's gonna calibrate itself. To change the valve stem seals, I have these two toolkits right here. An eBay one valve spring compressor kit, so that's how it looks. Here I have a leak down test. This is from my local hardware store. Now this is how it looks. These two support things bolted up to the head. Then I installed this long rod through, and using this arm here, I put it under the bar, and I can push the valve and the spring down, as we can see. However, if I push it down, the valve pushes itself with it. So if we somehow remove the clips, the valve is gonna fall into the combustion chamber, and we don't want that. And that's what we have the leak down test for. So I have the leak down test bolted into the spark plug hole. Then I have this thing here. I connect it up, and now I will start blowing air into the combustion chamber. I will supply 3 bars, and there's gonna be so much pressure constantly in the combustion chamber, and that's gonna keep the valve from falling in. It will not be possible to open the valve technically. Yes, now it's 4 bars. Then we put this tool in like that. And now when we push it down, we can see only the spring pushes down without the valve. Now using a screwdriver with some grease, I remove the retaining clips. Just like that. Now remove the tool and remove the valve spring now. And here is the valve stem seal. Usually with valve stem seal tools, you get special pliers. However, that one did not have that. So I just use a simple vice grip and lightly clamp it and remove it. Then here I have the new valve stem seal. And with the valve stem seals, you get this little plastic sleeve cylinder. When you install the valve stem seal, you put it over the valve because there are these grooves on the valve where the retainers sit in. And it's just so you don't destroy the rubber seal itself over these grooves. So you put the seal on like that, and now you can remove the plastic cylinder. Then I take a socket exactly of the outer diameter of the seal and lightly tap it in place. Then I put back the valve spring, put the tool on again. Now this is the tricky part. You need to reinstall the retaining clips. The best way to do it, you take the retainer and you put a little bit of grease on it. And also you use the grease to stick it onto the screwdriver. I put it on and I push it to the back side with one time. Now I will get the other, put the other one and release the spring. Now you just wipe off the excess grease, and that's it. That was the last valve stem seal. I did all of the other ones off camera because it is a bit time consuming. It's time to reassemble everything. Then now I will turn this screw at the end of the Velotronic motor right here. We will see that it's gonna set the whole camshaft to the end. It was all the way at the end here. When you turn and when you get to the end, you're not going to be able to turn the screw anymore, and just stop then. Just like that. They are just standing now, so be careful to not drop them down. Now I will take the entire assembly. I will also install exhaust camshafts, realign the notch with the vacuum pump like that. As we can see, the camshaft bearing ledges, they are already the upgraded ones, because at least for the N54 from factory they came with metal ones and they eat through the material. However, this is soft, so this is perfectly good. Now all the bearing caps to the head are torqued to 10. Now everything is torqued to spec, and the last thing is to reinstall the springs back into their original place. Seems like it's easiest with a simple screwdriver. That wasn't bad. I thought it was gonna be harder. The camshafts are in, and now it's time to remove. Timing chain assembly. So here's the tensioner. So this is how the guide rail bolts look on this car. The timing chain assembly. That is how it looks. How is it? It's okay. Drop in the assembly. The crankshaft hub with a new bolt lubed up very good. Then here I have the exhaust side of the Vanos gear with a new bolt that I lubed up. Then this is the intake side. However, now we need to also reinstall the camshaft locking tools. Seems that the camshaft have shifted a bit. Then I am installing these bolts. Flex plate is locked in the back of the engine. I will hand tight camshaft bolts. And now we can see that the chain is loose. We will install this tension that is compliant with the toolkit, and then I will screw it in all the way. Then I will tighten this shaft lightly, very lightly. It should be tightened to like 2 Newton meters or something like that. That is good. We can see that the chain is tight. The engine is in time. So we need to torque down the bolts. And the hub screw is torqued to firstly 50 Newton meters, 180 degrees. That is plenty. Now the Vanna sprockets, firstly 20 Newton meters, 180 degrees. Good. Now the oil pump sprocket is 5 and then 90 degrees, so it's just quarter of a turn. Now we remove the tensioner and then we install the real tensioner. And it is torqued to 80 Newton meters. Now we locked the flywheel again and we can see that the timing tool fits perfectly. Before we disassembled it, I did mark the position of the camshafts with a Sharpie, so I put them in the right way. But if you disassemble the engine and you haven't marked it, when the flex plate is locked, just as it is now, the correct way to install the camshafts is that the lobes on cylinder 1 is looking that way, and the lobes on the intake camshaft is looking that way. Now I want to install front main seal. Put the plastic on. Okay. And the vibration damper, or it's not really a vibration damper. That goes over the alternator. And then here it goes over the AC. However, here is the thing. The design is crazy. Then also one of the engine mounts. Here's the clean oil pan. I washed it. The oil pan doesn't have a gasket. It's sitting on sealant. Okay, let's put the oil pan on. Probably the last thing on the engine, this guide rail. Probably should have put it on before we found the timing, but yeah, it doesn't change anything. Spark plugs. I washed this valve cover as well, so I just want to blow it out real quick. I'm gonna add a bit sealant on the half moons. Now plug in these connectors, then the coils. Then the oil filter. New filter with a white O-ring. Now we need to replace the Vanna solenoids. Okay, here's the Vanna solenoid, pretty clean. Then here's the new one. And then also, as I'm in here, there is a thing called one-way Vanna's valve. And it's like a valve or some kind of a mesh filter for the Vannas right beside the Vanna solenoid. This thing is like a ball valve in here. I did order 2 new ones, but since the other side is such a hard place to reach, it's like behind the turbo, yeah, I'm not really gonna bother. I'm just gonna swap out one side. Don't see the point in swapping it out anyway. Just how it looks. Replace the leaking thermostat housing. So this one already comes with the sensor actually. Pull it off. Now the rear main seal. I hope it's not gonna leak. This time I installed the seal dry because many people keep saying it's supposed to go in dry. I'm gonna put on the AC compressor right now. Okay. Where's the... Ow. Yes. The AC compressor is fully on and I also plugged it in. I am also gonna actually put on the belt right now. The belt is on. Very good. So it took a while, but I did put the torque converter bolts in, tighten them. Only that took like an hour at least. Then I put in all the housing bolts. From here, I could reach my hand to all of them all the way around. I also put in the starter, put on the exhaust. Basically everything that we need to do under. Now you can see the starter is in, the housing bolts. Put on the gearbox cooler lines onto the engine block. There's a little ball holding it. These ECU cables. Positive terminal. Before I forget, I will tighten the engine mount. I did connect the 2 coolant pipes down onto the water pump. And also this one and this one, I think that's the only coolant pipes, to be honest. Plug in this vacuum line. Now the intercooler pipes. Actually, I'm gonna plug in a sensor here right now, just so I don't forget. Then, as you guys remember, the tip for the connector to this pipe broke off completely. So here I have a new one. Okay. That's the filter. Now on with this, connect up this hose here. So it seems that this engine takes 4.2 liters of oil. Yep, that is on max. I will go and connect up the battery. Coolant, I don't have any yet. I will just start it for a short period of time to see that everything is running and is correct. Then I can go and get some coolant. So I found a bit of coolant. Okay, I'm just gonna start it up now and then I'm gonna fill it up to the rest. So I drove 10 kilometers with this car, 10. And now there is some sound. When I drove it home, I drove it for like 10 kilometers, ran fine, drove home, and in the morning I was gonna start the car. I started it and there was a pure loud knock. Not a single knock, but constant knocking from the engine when I started it up cold. It would be there for 2 minutes. As the engine warms up, it would go away. So I checked the engine, everything looked okay. I checked the filter looked okay as well. And I couldn't figure it out, only when the engine is cold. Then I thought it's a rod knock for some reason. And after troubleshooting more, I just couldn't figure it out. I removed the valve cover and everything looked super clean, super nice up there. So then I did drop the subframe slightly down, just undid the bolts. Then it fell down a bit, removed the oil pan, and I did inspect all the rod bearings and all 4 of them looked mint. No problem with them whatsoever. So that was a waste of time. So then I put everything together and after that it was still knocking. And the sound, it was like I was so sure it's a rod knock because it was so perfectly matched with the revs. And the thing with these engines are there's so little information on them. The only information that I did manage to find was on the Peugeot engines or as well as in the Minis, UK groups, Mini Coopers, more information there. So then I removed the auxiliary belt and the noise was basically gone. That was kind of stupid of me to not do that first. I'm not sure if I have a clip of how the engine sounded with the knock. I think I have one, but not right after starting it. It was kind of a rookie mistake from me again of not checking it firstly, but now all the pulleys do look fine. A common problem what I found is that this water pump pulley, as you can see, it's rubber. Right here is rubber and if the rubber wears off or falls off at one place, it can make a very loud knock, also sounding like a rod knock. Other pulleys are good, and the only thing left that is actually missing from the engine right now is this pulley here. Or well, it's actually the it's the thing they call a friction wheel, something like that. And as we can see, this is the wheel that spins the water pump. So what I'm suspecting, it's this friction pulley that is defect on this car. Or maybe that we broke it or installed it wrongly. So here I bought a new one. So here's the new one, and here's the old one. As you guys saw, the way we installed it, we just basically put it there and we pressed it slightly up and we put the bolts in, and that's not the correct way to reinstall it. The correct way is you take this tab and you're supposed to pull it out and then you clip it on this little tab here. You can see it retracts the whole thing. Now we installed this one incorrectly the first time, but then after I found out, I did try to install it correctly. So I did take this one, I tried to pull it and it just didn't budge. And eventually I did manage to pull it, but when I pulled it, the whole thing came out, and yeah, now there's not even nothing to pull on. Okay, the belt is on. So now it goes on. Yeah, now you can see it's all loose when we have retracted the thing. But the super weird thing is that the knocking was only when the engine was cold. Warms a bit up and it goes away. I'm not sure why. The only thing that would make sense, since there is a connector on the thing here, is that it's actually electrically controlled and it pushes it outwards, and when the engine is cold, it doesn't engage the water pump. We will actually test that now, so we'll start it and look at it. Yeah! Okay, so when the engine is cold, it disengages. So now you can see it's disengaged. And now it's on. One more thing, the brakes make a lot of sound under braking. I did the other side already and the pads weren't worn completely, but they were like crusty, old. So since I bought the pads, I can just replace them. Now we'll compress the piston. Yeah, also by the way, I did get this car inspected because the only faults it had was the coolant leak and the bad idle or rough idle, and now it's gone. Yeah, you can see it's very... Yeah, all the tabs are like broken and... Then also the guide pins. There is a little lip, but it's not big at all, so I don't really care. Then I am putting on the summer tires, because I mean it is basically summer here. So now let's do the back as well. Damn. Time to give this a good clean. Everyone loves when the pressure was the engine base, so we'll start with that. Now I have driven around 300 kilometers, driving perfect. These engines are pretty loud on cold start in general, but exactly on this one, it has this kind of metal rattle, mostly on cold start. Many people say it's the heat shield, and often it is, but in this case, it's actually the wastegate for the turbo, and this is a super common problem. And what happens is the arm that goes from the vacuum control unit on the turbo, then there's a shaft that goes from it to the other side to the wastegate, and it is like a connection pipe connection, and it's loose on that. So what I found on forum, people just use this thing. This is like some kind of clamp, and it like clamps together the arm. So I don't know if it's gonna work, we'll see. If you have the same problems, here's the part code. And then also we need to replace the belt tensioner, and it should be together with the new belt. Like this. And it does seem like exactly the same part. Let's see if it's the same length. Yes, it is. So it's actually important to do the belt on this engine as preventative maintenance, because the common problem, it snaps and then it takes the gearbox cooling lines, these ones, and then yeah, you're basically stranded. This little pipe here is the wastegate, and if you listen, now to install it, so I'll just undo these 4 10mm bolts. So now this is the part that shakes. So this is the whole wastegate itself, and this whole thing. So what this thing does is it's just gonna press the arm towards the wastegate arm, and it's gonna keep it from shaking. It's just like this. However, this lower part is gonna rub against the turbo if we will just put it on like this, against down here, this part. So I'm just gonna grind off this bottom part. I grinded it off. I can't show you this, guys, because I need to use both of my arms. So that's it. There's a lot less sound. It's not completely gone because the wastegate itself, it rattles a bit, but at least it's way less. So I actually turned the clip sideways because when it was backwards, it was hitting the shield, and now it's free of everything. In with the airbox. Time for a test drive. I really like it. Small car, very fast. Not fast, but like very comfortable as a city car. You need to go to the store real quick. Practical. It has pretty good space as well. Well, and of course that it's literally like brand new inside. No wear on the steering wheel. The seats have no wear. As clean as you can basically get these cars. Exactly perfect for this car. It's not slow, but it's not like anything crazy either. It's done. Driving perfectly, really no flaws. Engine's running perfectly as well. So we bought it for 30,000 krones, and I think I put in it around 20k. So it's like right over 50,000 krones, which is like, I don't know, 4,500 euros. If you would like to support this channel, I do have a Patreon, it's in the description, and become a member if you'd like to. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.